Hi everyone, and welcome back to Johnny How To in a multi-part series of a quick start to Photoshop. We're going to try and recreate, roughly speaking, go through the steps of recreating this Star Wars collage with either the original elements or with elements that you grab on your own through Google Images or images that you already have. Now in the last video I left off where we had just created a new document and it probably just going to have a white background for you. For you it's probably going to have a layer here that says background and it's probably going to be locked. If you want to unlock it, you can just click on the lock and that will take that away. Or if it says background, B-A-C-K-G-R-O-U-N-D, not B-G for me, if you double click on that and rename it and give it a name and press enter, it should also get rid of the lock as well. I had already done that, but you can go ahead and unlock that layer that way as well. So I'm just going to unlock that layer. And what do I mean by that? Well, if I have a lock on a layer, I can't move it. So the first tool we'll talk about in Photoshop is this move tool we have right here. So the keyboard shortcut is V, which you'll use quite a bit. But it's this top icon. If I try and move this white layer that I have here, I can't do it. Even though I have it selected, I say I want to move it. I have the move tool selected, I can't move it because it's locked. So if I unlock it, now I can actually move it. And now I get this weird checkerboard image. Now this checkerboard image means that this is area that's not being used by any imagery. It means it's transparent, it's see-through. If I save this out as certain file types, it's going to be completely see-through and transparent. There's nothing existing there in our Photoshop document. That's just a heads up like, hey, there's no pixel information here in your composition you're creating. So I'll go move this back with the, again, with the move tool. Let's go and drag in our first image. So I'm going to bring in the Star Wars plate. I'm just going to left click and drag it into Photoshop. You can see that I get a plus icon. When I let go, I now have this image placed in Photoshop. Now there's an X through it right now, meaning I haven't actually added it to my composition permanently yet because if I press escape, it goes away. I'll go and drag this in again and let's talk about some of the modification tools. So first off, if I left click and drag, I can move this around and you can see that I get these purple outlines. This means it's centered horizontally and now it's centered vertically since I'm getting those smart guides to help me center this up. Now let's talk about these dots and then other things we can do with this before we actually place this in our Photoshop document. So if I grab one of these corners and left click and drag, I can squish and squash this image. Usually I don't want to do that, but you can do that if you want. I'm going to do Control Z to undo that. If you grab one of these ones that are in the middle, you can do it just along one, just either horizontally or vertically. Now, a lot of times when you're resizing, you want to do it proportionally. I don't want to squish these guys out, make them really, really thin or squash or anything like that. If I hold down Shift, it's going to force it to be the same proportions as it scales it up or down. So that's really a good modifier key to remember, is if I'm left clicking and dragging, hold down Shift, that'll force it to stay in proportion. Or in the case of rotation, so if I hover a little bit above the corner here, you can see that my icon changes these little curved arrows. If I left click and drag, I'm rotating 1 degree at a time. But if I hold down Shift, it's going to rotate it 15 degrees at a time. So you can see the numbers there that are changing as I'm dragging. So rotation, if I just left click and drag 1 degree at a time, or I can go 15 at a time. I'm not really going to rotate this now, but I am going to scale it up a little bit. And I'm not going to center it perfectly. Because if I centered it perfectly based on this image, Luke's head is a little bit off center, so I'm going to move it just a little bit over to where he's roughly centered up. And I'm going to go ahead and press enter to actually add this layer to my composition. And let's talk about how the layer palette works here. So imagine we're looking downward at this picture that's laying on a desk right now on a table. If I look under this, if I turn off or move away this Star Wars plate, below this I have just a white piece of paper that's on the desk. So your layer order is whatever's on top is what's visible, and anything below it is only going to show in the areas where it's not covering. So if I drag this layer, left click and drag this below the background, or what I've named this BG layer right here, now I see only white. Why is that? Well, because this is on the top. Just think I have a blank piece of paper laying on top of this Star Wars plate image that I have right here. So whatever's on top you're going to see, whatever's below it is only going to be seen if you erase it away or mask it or other things we're going to talk about in just a little bit. So it's just a little bit about the interface. How can we move around those? So we already talked about the move tool. If I wanted to zoom in and out of this, maybe I want to get in closer on Han and Leia and Luke's face, I can do Control or Command on a Mac. Plus or minus will zoom in and out. And if I'm zoomed in and I want to pan around the canvas, I don't want to actually move their layer. So if I'll do Control 0 to frame this, that's a good one as well. So Control 0, Command 0 will frame it. So say I'm zoomed out, I want to use all the gray space my monitor has, I'll do Control 0, and that'll zoom in into that to use all the room that I have available to me. Now, if I have the Move tool selected, I'm actually moving the layer. that I have selected, which is Star Wars Play. Control Z to undo that. But if I want to pan around this when I'm zoomed in, say I'm zoomed in and I was working here, but now I want to move over here to see the other part of the image, I can either use the hand tool, which is right here. Keyboard shortcut is H, but really you don't really need to use those because if you hold down spacebar, it's as long as you're holding down spacebar, it's going to switch to the hand tool. Now I can left click and drag and pan over, but I'm not physically moving this layer. I'm just panning around my view of the canvas as a whole. So notice I'm not moving this to the right because if I zoom out, I'll do Control 0. You can see the plate hasn't moved. I was just panning around what I was viewing when I was zoomed in. So those are some basic movement tools. I don't want to go too far into the next step because I feel like it deserves some video. The next step is going to be actually masking off this plate so I can get rid of the blue on this gold border, but without actually permanently erasing those pixels. So I'm going to go and save that for the next video. Thank you for watching.